In the glittering world of hip-hop, Sean Combs, better known as P Diddy, has long been an icon. His rise to the top was swift, and his influence undeniable. But behind the fame, there are shadows, secrets buried in the past that have now come to light. In a bombshell revelation, new evidence has emerged suggesting that P Diddy may have played a role in one of the most notorious murders in music history, the killing of Tupac Shakur. For decades, the mystery surrounding Tupac's death has captivated the public. On September 7, 1996, the legendary rapper was gunned down in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. Tupac's death was ruled as part of the escalating East Coast-West Coast rivalry, a tragic result of gang violence mixed with the dangerous allure of fame. But recent investigations have unearthed a darker, more sinister theory that Tupac's murder may have been orchestrated not by rival gangs, but by P Diddy himself. In the mid-1990s, Tupac Shakur was one of the biggest names in music. He was a charismatic figure, known not only for his lyrical genius but also for his outspoken nature. Tupac's career was marked by controversy and triumph in equal measure. But as his fame grew, so did the tensions between East Coast and West Coast rappers, a feud stoked by media and rivalries between their record labels. On the West Coast, Tupac had aligned himself with Suge Knight's Death Row Records, while P Diddy was the mastermind behind Bad Boy Records, representing the East Coast. The rivalry between the two labels was well-documented. Violent altercations, diss tracks, and public insults filled the airwaves. But behind the scenes, something more deadly was brewing. According to a new whistleblower, identified only as X, Diddy felt threatened by Tupac's growing power. The two had once been friends, but after a series of public beefs and Tupac's allegation that Diddy was involved in a 1994 robbery that nearly killed him, the relationship turned hostile. Tupac was a wild card, X said in an exclusive interview. He knew things that could ruin people, powerful people. As tensions escalated, X claims that Diddy became increasingly paranoid about what Tupac might reveal. The final straw came when Tupac started hinting that he had damning evidence linking Diddy to illegal activities beyond the music industry. All of the investigation points to a secret meeting that took place just weeks before Tupac's murder. According to sources, Diddy met with key figures in the East Coast hip-hop scene, including several individuals known for their connections to organized crime. Not the purpose of the meeting: to eliminate Tupac once and for all. It wasn't just about music anymore, X explained. It was about survival. Diddy had too much to lose if Tupac decided to go public with what he knew. The plan was simple but brutal. On the night of September 7, 1996, Tupac and Suge Knight attended a Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas. As they left the MGM Grand, their entourage was involved in a minor scuffle with a known gang member, Orlando Anderson. This altercation would later be used to cover up the true nature of what was to come. At 11:15 p.m., as Tupac and Suge drove down Las Vegas Boulevard, a white Cadillac pulled up alongside them. Shots rang out, striking Tupac multiple times. Suge was grazed by a bullet but survived. Tupac was rushed to the hospital, where he died 6 days later. While the world mourned the loss of a legend, while questions about who was truly responsible for the murder lingered. For years, Orlando Anderson was considered the prime suspect, but no charges were ever brought against him. The case went cold and theories swirled. Was it gang retaliation, a botched robbery, or something more sinister? In 2023, the case was blown wide open when X came forward, claiming to have been present at the meeting where Diddy allegedly ordered the hit on Tupac. It was all planned, X revealed. Diddy didn't want to leave anything to chance. He knew that if Tupac lived, his empire could crumble. The new evidence included a series of encrypted text messages between Diddy and an associate in Las Vegas, sent just hours before the murder. The messages discussed the final piece being in place and a large payment that would be processed after everything was taken care of. Investigators were skeptical at first. After all, Diddy had spent decades building a reputation as a savvy businessman and producer. But the forensic analysis of the messages, coupled with corroborating witness statements, left little doubt. The texts were real, and they pointed directly to Diddy. The revelations shocked the world. Fans of both Tupac and Diddy were left reeling, trying to reconcile the idea that one of the most influential figures in hip-hop could be involved in such a heinous act. As more details came to light, the story became even more complex. It was revealed that Diddy had also made significant payments to several individuals connected to the Las Vegas underworld in the weeks following Tupac's death. These payments, disguised as business expenses, were funneled through shell companies and offshore accounts, making them nearly impossible to trace until now. The forensic accountants working with law enforcement uncovered a paper trail that linked the payments directly to known associates of Orlando Anderson, the man who had been blamed for the shooting. This was a professional hit, one investigator said. Diddy didn't pull the trigger, but he made sure it happened. The case against Diddy grew stronger with each passing day. Interviews with former Bad Boy Records employees painted a picture of a man obsessed with control, someone willing to go to any lengths to protect his empire. He was ruthless, one former employee recalled. If you crossed him, you were done. Tupac was a threat, and Diddy knew he had to be dealt with. As the investigation into Tupac Shakur's murder deepened, the spotlight on P Diddy intensified. The hip-hop mogul, who had spent decades cultivating an image of success and respectability, now faced the possibility of being connected to one of the most infamous unsolved murders in modern music history. But the revelations coming from the whistleblower X shook the industry to its core. Many who had once idolized Diddy were left wondering how deep the darkness surrounding him truly went, with X providing critical evidence, including details of encrypted messages and payments. More individuals from Diddy's inner circle began to speak out. Some did so out of guilt, others out of fear that they, too, could be implicated in the unfolding scandal. One such figure was a man identified only as TR, a former bodyguard who had worked for Diddy during the 1990s. TR had been present on the night of Tupac's murder. At the time, his job was to protect Diddy at all costs, and he had been given strict instructions to keep an eye out for any signs of retaliation or violence during their trip to Las Vegas. In a chilling confession, TR described a conversation he had overheard between Diddy and one of his most trusted associates, Andre Zip Faison. Diddy told Zip, "It needs to look clean. No loose ends. I didn't know what he meant at the time, but now it's all starting to make sense, TR." Looking back, that whole night felt off. The energy was different. Diddy was on edge, pacing around and making calls all night. He knew something big was going down. T.R.'s testimony, combined with X's detailed knowledge of the secret meeting where the hit was allegedly planned, provided investigators with a crucial timeline. They now believed that Diddy had set everything in motion weeks before Tupac's death, working through intermediaries to ensure his own involvement would remain hidden. As more witnesses came forward, it became clear that Tupac's murder wasn't just about the infamous East Coast-West Coast feud that had dominated headlines in the 1990s. All the rivalry between Tupac and Diddy had certainly fueled tensions, but the real reason behind the hit, according to investigators, was far more personal and far more dangerous. Tupac had become aware of Diddy's dealings with certain criminal enterprises, including money laundering operations that funneled cash through music industry channels. Tupac, always vocal and unafraid to challenge authority, had reportedly threatened to expose Diddy's illegal activities. He had even hinted at this in interviews and in the lyrics of some of his final songs, though many at the time dismissed these statements as part of his ongoing feud with Bad Boy Records. But Tupac's words were more than just disses. According to those who knew him, he had evidence, documents, and recordings that would have implicated Diddy in serious criminal conduct. Tupac had planned to release this information, possibly in a tell-all interview or a new album, and Diddy knew it. At least to protect himself and his empire, Diddy made the decision that Tupac had to be silenced permanently. As the FBI and local law enforcement delved deeper into the case, they uncovered disturbing links between Diddy's music empire and organized crime syndicates. The payments funneled through offshore accounts were tied not just to Las Vegas gangsters, but also to larger criminal organizations operating out of New York and Miami. Diddy's rise to fame, it seemed, was built on more than just talent and business acumen. It was supported by a network of illegal activities that extended far beyond the music industry. With the motive now clearer, investigators focused on the night of Tupac's murder. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when a former member of the Southside Crips, a gang with ties to Orlando Anderson, came forward. Known only as CJ, this individual claimed to have direct knowledge of the hit. According to CJ, Diddy had offered a $1 million bounty for anyone who could kill Tupac. The offer was relayed through multiple intermediaries, and Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Crips, took on the job. Anderson had already been involved in a physical altercation with Tupac earlier that night, which provided the perfect cover for what was about to happen. It wasn't just gang violence, CJ said. This was a paid hit. Diddy put the money up, and everyone knew it. He wanted Tupac dead, and he made sure it happened. CJ's confession was supported by financial records, which showed a large cash withdrawal from one of Diddy's accounts just days before the murder. That money had been funneled through various channels and eventually landed in the hands of Anderson and his associates. The drive-by shooting itself was carried out with chilling precision. The white Cadillac that pulled alongside Tupac's car had been stolen just days before, and witnesses described how the gunman fired with practiced accuracy. Tupac was hit multiple times in the chest and abdomen, while Suge Knight, sitting in the driver's seat, was grazed by a bullet. The car sped away, disappearing into the Las Vegas night. In the chaotic aftermath of the shooting, law enforcement had focused primarily on gang-related motives. But now, with CJ's testimony and the financial records in hand, it was clear that this was a professional hit paid for and orchestrated by Sean Combs. By 2024, the case had reached a critical point. The accumulated evidence, from X's whistleblower testimony to the financial records, encrypted messages, and witnessed statements, was overwhelming. The public had been largely unaware of the ongoing investigation, but as rumors began to swirl, it became clear that something big was about to happen. On a warm summer morning in June, the unthinkable happened. P Diddy was arrested at his Beverly Hills mansion on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and orchestrating the assassination of Tupac Shakur. The arrest sent shockwaves through the music industry. Diddy, a man who had once been untouchable, was now facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars. As news of the arrest broke, media outlets from around the world descended on Los Angeles, eager to cover what was being called the trial of the century. In the days following the arrest, more details of the investigation were made public. Diddy's team of high-powered attorneys scrambled to mount a defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. The encrypted text messages, the financial transactions, the whistleblower accounts all painted a damning picture. The trial began in the fall of 2024, with the world watching. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Carla Mendez, presented a compelling case. Witness after witness took the stand, each one adding another piece to the puzzle. The jury listened in stunned silence as former associates of Diddy described his ruthless pursuit of power and control, his willingness to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. X, the whistleblower, testified in court under heavy security. His identity was finally revealed as a former music executive who had worked closely with both Diddy and Suge Knight in the 1990s. His testimony was critical, as he detailed the secret meeting where Diddy had allegedly ordered the hit on Tupac. It wasn't just business, X said on the stand. It was personal. Diddy felt like Tupac was going to ruin everything. ETR, the bodyguard, also testified, confirming that Diddy had been nervous and agitated in the hours leading up to Tupac's murder. He recalled Diddy's cryptic instructions to Andre Zip Faison and described the tense atmosphere in the days following the shooting. But it was CJ's testimony that truly shocked the courtroom. A former gang member with nothing left to lose, CJ laid out the entire plot, from the bounty Diddy placed on Tupac's head to the payment that eventually made its way to Orlando Anderson. This wasn't some random drive by CJ, told the jury. This was planned. Diddy made sure Tupac was dead. As the trial of P. Diddy continued, the weight of the evidence became impossible to ignore. Every testimony seemed to close the net tighter around the man who had once ruled the hip-hop world. The courtroom was filled with an electric tension, each day revealing more shocking details about the ruthless power plays that had led to Tupac Shakur's murder. When CJ, the former Southside Crips gang member, testified, the prosecution's case reached its climax. His testimony was raw and unfiltered, revealing how the wheels had been set in motion for Tupac's assassination. The jury hung on every word as CJ recounted how Diddy had used intermediaries to reach out to the gang, offering the $1 million bounty on Tupac's head. "We all knew what was going down that night," CJ said, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. "Orlando took the job, but we were all in on it. Diddy wanted it done, and we were the ones to make it happen." CJ went on to describe how the gang had been provided with the white Cadillac used in the drive-by. He confirmed that the altercation with Tupac earlier that night at the MGM Grand was a convenient cover for the hit. "Everyone thought it was just street beef," CJ explained. "That was just the surface. Diddy made sure it went down that way, so no one would suspect him." The prosecution played surveillance footage from the MGM Grand, showing the confrontation between Tupac, Suge Knight, and Orlando Anderson. While the footage had been widely circulated over the years, it took on a new meaning after CJ's testimony. What had once appeared to be a random scuffle now seemed like the carefully orchestrated precursor to a murder. The courtroom was silent as CJ finished his testimony. His words had left no doubt in the minds of the jurors. Tupac's murder had been meticulously planned, and Diddy had been the one pulling the strings. The defense team, led by renowned attorney Victor Glass, faced an uphill battle. They had built their case on the premise that Tupac's murder was simply the result of gang violence, unconnected to Diddy. They argued that the prosecution's witnesses were unreliable former criminals and disgruntled employees looking to save themselves or get revenge. "Diddy is not a killer," Glass told the jury during closing arguments. "He's a businessman, a music mogul." These are wild accusations from people with agendas. But the defense's argument seemed to lack the weight needed to counter the overwhelming evidence. The encrypted messages, the financial records, the testimony from X, CJ, and others, it all painted a chilling picture of Diddy's involvement. The defense could not shake the image of Diddy as a man who would stop at nothing to protect his empire. In a last-ditch effort, the defense brought Diddy himself to the stand. Dressed impeccably in a designer suit, Diddy appeared calm and confident. His charm and charisma, which had served him so well throughout his career, were on full display as he addressed the jury. "I didn't kill Tupac," Diddy said, his voice measured. "I've had my differences with him, but I respected him as an artist and as a person. What happened in Las Vegas was a tragedy, but I had nothing to do with it." Diddy's testimony was compelling, but it lacked substance. While he denied involvement, the prosecution's evidence was too damning. Cross-examination by Ada Carla Mendez was relentless. Sachi grilled Diddy on the encrypted messages, the payments to Orlando Anderson's associates, and his secret meetings in the weeks leading up to Tupac's death. "Can you explain why millions of dollars were funneled through offshore accounts connected to known gang members?" Mendez asked, her voice sharp. Diddy hesitated for the briefest of moments before replying, "I don't control every financial decision in my company. We handle a lot of business, and sometimes things get moved around. But Mendez pressed on, refusing to let Diddy off the hook. These payments were made just days before Tupac's murder, Mr. Combs. Are you seriously suggesting that's a coincidence? Diddy shifted in his seat, but stuck to his story. It's just business, he repeated. I had nothing to do with his death. But by then it was clear that Diddy's testimony wasn't enough to sway the jury. The prosecution had built a case too strong to be dismissed as mere coincidence. After weeks of testimony, the case finally went to the jury. The world watched anxiously as the jurors deliberated for 3 tense days. During that time, media outlets speculated on the outcome, with pundits debating whether Diddy's power and influence would protect him from conviction. But on the morning of the 3rd day, the jury returned with their verdict. The courtroom was packed with reporters, fans, and members of both the East Coast and West Coast hip-hop communities. The air was thick with anticipation as the foreman stood to deliver the decision. We, the jury, find the defendant, Sean Combs, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the 1st degree. But the words hung in the air, a shockwave rippling through the room. The man who had once been one of the most powerful figures in music was now convicted of orchestrating the murder of Tupac Shakur. Gasps erupted from the gallery, and Diddy sat motionless, his face unreadable. Outside the courthouse, the scene was chaotic. Fans of both Tupac and Diddy gathered in droves, some mourning, others celebrating. The world had never expected such an outcome, a high-profile figure like Diddy, brought down by the very world he had helped shape. And in the months that followed, the fallout from the trial was immense. Diddy's empire began to crumble as sponsors, business partners, and collaborators distanced themselves from the convicted mogul. Bad Boy Records, once a dominant force in the music industry, saw its influence wane as Diddy's name became synonymous with scandal and betrayal. The story didn't end with the verdict, but rather it signaled the beginning of an even deeper reckoning. The music world was reeling from the conviction of one of its most influential figures, and the revelation surrounding P Diddy's orchestrated hit on Tupac Shakur sent shockwaves through the industry. And for years, rumors had swirled about the dark underbelly of the hip-hop business, but no one could have anticipated the extent of the conspiracy now laid bare for all to see. P Diddy's sentencing came swiftly. The court had little leniency to offer a man convicted of first-degree conspiracy to commit murder. Sean Combs was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a crushing blow to the once untouchable mogul. As he was escorted out of the courtroom, flanked by armed guards, his face remained stoic, but inside, the weight of his actions had finally caught up to him. Bad Boy Records, the label that had once boasted an empire of chart-topping artists, was now a sinking ship. Top executives resigned one after another, distancing themselves from the scandal that threatened to pull them down as well. Artists fled the label, not wanting their names attached to the toxic legacy left behind by their former boss. The ripple effect of Diddy's downfall didn't stop there. Investors pulled out of various ventures linked to him, and lucrative brand partnerships evaporated overnight. His business interests in fashion, liquor, and television took heavy financial hits. What had taken decades to build was unraveling in mere weeks. For the public, this was a moment of reckoning. The image of Diddy as the smooth-talking mogul who had shaped the sound of a generation was forever tarnished. Who had once admired his hustle and success now saw him as a puppet master willing to destroy lives to protect his wealth and influence. The headlines that once celebrated his triumphs now chronicled his disgrace. For Tupac's family, the conviction brought a bittersweet sense of closure. His mother, Assassination Shakur, had fought tirelessly for justice before her own passing in 2016, and while she didn't live to see Diddy's downfall, her spirit had remained a guiding force in the pursuit of truth. Tupac's siblings and extended family expressed relief that, at long last, the truth had come to light. Fans of Tupac Shakur, Two felt that justice had finally been served, though many remained haunted by how long it had taken. The years of speculation, the unanswered questions, the cold case files, all of it had contributed to an overwhelming sense of loss that had never truly been addressed. Now, with Diddy behind bars, there was a feeling that Tupac's spirit could finally rest. In the end, Sean Combs' legacy was irreversibly tarnished. Once hailed as a visionary entrepreneur who had transformed the music industry, he was now remembered as a man who had orchestrated the murder of one of the most beloved and influential artists of all time. His name, once synonymous with success, had become a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of power and the length some would go to maintain their hold on it. For Tupac Shakur, however, his legacy only grew stronger. His music, his message, and his life story continued to inspire generations of artists and activists alike. In death, he had become larger than life, a symbol of resistance, of speaking truth to power, and of the ultimate cost of standing up to those who sought to silence him. As the world moved on from the trial, one thing remained clear: the story of Tupac Shakur and P Diddy was more than just a tale of fame and violence. It was a story about justice, truth, and the enduring power of a voice that could not be silenced.